From the News Channel 5 Network, this is MorningLine.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on MorningLine. I'm Nick Beres. I hope you remember me. I was gone last week, but I'm back in the saddle on this Monday, and do hope you had a very enjoyable weekend. We've got a great show to start things off this week. Good just to sit back and relax. It's kind of rainy, wet out there right now. No need to head out. Just relax, watch the show. In fact, call and join in the conversation if you like, because this is a chance for you to get some free legal advice from one of the very best attorneys in this entire area who specializes, and as you see on the screen there, just went up, Elder Law, the number 737-7587, and our guest with us this morning is none other than Tim Takacs. Good morning.
Good morning.
I was flattering you.
Thank you. You were, and I appreciate that.
One of the very best.
One of the very best.
Not just, dare I say, not just one of the very best elder law attorneys, which is a growing niche within the legal field locally. Yeah. But, I mean, you go all over the country and speak at various organizations.
I do, and in fact, last Monday I was in Minneapolis. I was speaking to the Minnesota Elder Law Institute, so a lot of my 200 or so of my colleagues up in Minnesota. And, so I got a chance to talk about some of the practice that we have and my practice model and how we do our work. Right.
Now the reason that's being done is when you talk about your practice model, and this will open it up to give you an idea of what we're talking about this morning. This is a growing aspect of the legal field, right? I mean, elder law, you've been at it for a while.
Yeah,
you saw
over 20 years, right.
Right.
Yeah.
But you've seen this obviously coming to a head with the baby boomers aging now.
Right.
But talk about how you were one of probably the very first to start getting into this and recognizing this is going to be an important field.
Right. I was, there was probably in the early 90s, there was maybe a half a dozen of us or so in the state that were practicing in this area. And elder law really started about 25 years or so ago in the late 80s, and a bunch of lawyers that I got together, and a lot of them came out of legal services because they were doing work for older people who had not much money, and they were needing to get help and getting into nursing homes and whatnot, and how are you going to pay for that, and can you qualify for Medicaid? So, and then also the people who needed powers of attorney and conservatorships and guardianships and all of that. So that's kind of how it got started. And I started in the early, about 91 and 92, so I was kind of like almost like the first wave, and and starting to practice in that area.
Now, let me ask you this: before you went into that, at that time, were you practicing general law before
I was really general civil practice, pretty much. And I was doing divorces, and I was in Hendersonville, civil stuff. Yes.
But you looked around, and then what did you say to yourself?
Well, for one, as I realized that it was, I think, what people wanted when they were looking for a lawyer, they were wanting somebody who was good at what they did and specialized in it. Okay. And I felt like when I had been practicing law for 8 or 9 years that that I wanted to specialize in something, and a lot of my story is people walk into your office and they hand you legal problems, and they say like this older, that's really the story that I have as an older gentleman who's like in his 70s. He walked into my office like in 90 or 91 and said, I need help with my because my wife's in a nursing home and I really don't know what to do. And I said, well, maybe let's see if we can find out what I can do to help you.
Right.
And then I started to study and learn in this area, and so that's kind of how I got started.
So back then, people would go to a general practicing lawyer and ask questions. You realized that you're seeing more people asking these questions. You're boning up on it, and you're realizing this is a whole growing field. And then
and I was interested in it, and I like doing the work.
Sure.
Yeah, and I like the people that are I feel like I have a certain amount of empathy for what what they're going through.
But you
and
really
whatever.
do help people. Now, most lawyers, when you go to them, are there to help, but you help them at a time of their life that can be a little bit scary.
It is, and it's interesting when I think about sometimes my career is that I did a lot of civil practice, done a lot of domestic relations work, divorces and whatnot, and you see people at their worst. I know anybody who's ever been through a divorce. Unfortunately, I haven't, but anybody who's ever been through that, they just it's a very trying time for them, and you see a lot of people at their worst, and a lot of what we try to do is get them through a very stressful and trying situation. And there's some ways it's very similar to what we do in the practice that we have. You have a older person, and they're often they're going through a healthcare crisis, maybe a financial crisis, and the family's trying to pull together and figure out how to deal with this issue and making sure mom is being taken care of. And I guess that's really what I found is when I started doing elder law in the early 90s, is that much of it was about getting public benefits for people who are in nursing homes.
Sure.
But the reason, as you mentioned, I go all over the country, talking about this, is that I started hiring non-lawyer professionals in my office. I've got a licensed master social worker, registered nurse,
you have a nurse,
licensed marriage and family therapist. All of those, the professionals that are kind of healthcare professionals that are helping people, what we say is find, get, and pay for good care. And that was an innovation, that I developed in the 90s that almost nobody was doing, and that's really what I put together, and that's why I go to all over the country, because other lawyers want to know how to do that.
Yep.
In fact, I have lawyers come to my office. I probably average. It's probably for the last dozen years, I average one a month.
And so they'll call, and you're willing to give your time to
They come to
help
my
others.
office and say, we want to see how you work, and so
And
lawyers
you're pretty
come.
open about that.
I am, yeah. We love having visitors. We love to show off our practice and what we do. And
exactly, that's high praise when they come to you for that. And listen, we're going to get to a call or two before we go to the break, but real quickly, just lay out for folks the types of basic things sometimes that they come in asking for, so that we can give them an idea what they can call and ask you about.
And certainly that we do estate planning.
Estate
People
planning,
want wills. They want powers of attorney.
The different types there are and how you do it.
They trust. They are concerned about taking care of their parents. We had a lot of calls about people are trying to make sure that mom's taken care of, and they're worried about where can she go and what can she do and how can she pay for this. So we look at Medicare and Medicaid and VA benefits and Social Security and all sorts of other benefits, that TennCare benefits that people have, that that's really a lot of the stuff of what we do.
Good. Okay, that gives you an idea of what you can call, things like reverse mortgages. I know you've had questions on that
how to
before.
pay for care. Absolutely.
How to pay for care, all that. So those are some ideas for you. The number 737-7587. I have a lot of questions for you as well. But before we go to our first break, let's take Mike, who called in quickly, and then the lines can fill up. We do have them open. You see the number on the screen. But Mike, good morning.
Good morning, Nick. How are you?
Good. How can we help you, Mike?
Always enjoy your program, and I've listened to your guest, and I guess two questions.
Sure.
The first one, from previous shows, it's been stated that simply a note written down would be held up as a will if you're. So my question would be, these online people that do online wills, I hate to give a name of the business.
Sure.
Does Tennessee recognize those? And the second thing, if he could go into probate, is all wills, when a parent passes, goes to probate, or does it only when a sibling is contesting the will? If he could explain some more about that.
Yeah, so first of all,
thank you, Mike. Good hearing from you.
Yeah, Mike asked a question about the online services, and these things are not really new. I mean, maybe we all we see a few of them online. We see advertisements. They're not the first ones. I've seen software programs. You can go to office supply places and get legal documents, and Mike asked, are those recognized or valid in the state of Tennessee? I mean, they are.
Does it vary though from state to state? Are there different?
I mean, certainly there are specific requirements to have a valid will. And what I understand about a lot of those products is that they're drafted or done by lawyers or people. I mean,
But
you know.
those requirements are uniform pretty much nationally, and are they dictated by federal law or local?
They're state law typically.
But they usually
they're going to
pretty much the
follow
same?
state law because you go look at the statutes or you talk to a lawyer in that state and say, well, these are the requirements for a valid will, and they built that into their software programs. And those programs. I know some of my colleagues, they sort of we don't need to be having these. The main thing that you get when you go to talk to a lawyer, hopefully, about doing your estate planning is that you get counsel as to what works for you.
Right.
I mean, that's the whole point. I always say is that I draft legal documents, but that's typically at the end of a process called estate planning.
Sure, you've worked it through before you put it on paper.
We talk about what it is. Tell me why you're here. What do you want? What do you think you want? I mean, my job as a professional is to listen to you as the client, and let's talk together about. You have certain objectives that you want, and then I will help you meet those objectives. We'll talk through those, and then the end result might be a document or a series of documents or whatever. With a software program, or you go online, the consumer goes, well, I think this is what I need, so I'm going to go get it. And those programs typically they ask a series of questions and say, well, do you have this? Do you have this? And they're better than not, usually often better than not having anything at all.
Okay, and when we talk about having not anything at all, before we go to the break, and we come back, I'm going to let you talk about probate when we come back.
Right.
But the other question about just the will, literally, like if I'm writing it on this sheet of paper here.
And you've heard me, maybe you've heard me say this,
sure
Altima.
Yeah,
Altima.
Altima.
Yeah.
All right, so if I just write Altima,
right.
and I seal it up, and that's what it is, and that's my will, Altima,
right.
and that pretty much makes it clear.
Very possibly that's going to be admitted to probate if necessary.
If that's all they have to work with, that's what they're going to say. And obviously, he wants to leave everything to his mother.
Right.
All right, we'll take a break on that note. When we come back, we'll get to more calls.
Not that we're going to recommend that,
we won't.
but at the same time.
We'll talk about why you don't recommend going that route as well. But the number is 737-7587. If you're on hold, stay there. We'll get your calls. Also, when we come back, we'll answer the second part of Mike's question about probate.
Okay.
All right, we'll be back right after this.